Hara had instructed Henry to idle the engines down, and for the last few miles they had been cruising on the leftover momentum and the wind. They could have arrived earlier, but they would have risked more damage to the engine and the airship. Gideon came to stand next to her. "It looks quaint." Hara would have said sleepy if she had been in a good mood, or likened it to a one-horse town where the horse had died and been buried. There were no other airships, but there were plenty of steam engines in the courtyard outside her Upa's workshop. Upa took in all the vehicles in the area for repairs, and he often invented his own as well. His workshop was the largest building in the small town. There were some stores and a few houses, but most people lived further out on their farms. Hara kicked the ladder over the edge and it clattered and almost reached the ground. Henry sidled up next to her and Gideon. "You all right with me wandering around for a bit? I haven't been off the lady in almost a year." Hara said, "It's your choice. You aren't a prisoner anymore. We'll be around for a day or two while we do repairs. We'll be at that workshop over there." She pointed to her Upa's workshop and then started down the ladder. The others followed behind her. She wasn't worried about setting a guard as there wasn't anywhere the ship could limp off to in its current condition. All the gear on board was locked up and she had the keys. The pirates had kindly left them in the stateroom. Gideon was down next. He looked around at the town and tucked himself into Hara's shadow. Once Henry was down, he scuttled off and Hara wondered if they would ever see him again. It would be difficult to get the airship moving without someone in the engine room. Hara doubted she could convince Gideon to shovel coal. Anna came out of the post shop situated on the edge of the landing field. She was there late, but that wasn't unusual. She leaned against the door of the shop and said, "Haven't seen you in a while. I thought you died or something." Hara ignored the tone. Anna was always grumpy. Anna pushed away from the door and came over to give her a hug. A little tighter than usual, which meant Anna had probably worried about her. Hara felt guilty. She should have at least sent a letter to tell them she was fine. Even better than fine. She had finally escaped her father. Anna said softly against Hara's hair, "Too long, my girl. Too long." Anna looked over her shoulder to Gideon and asked, "So, is this your man?" "He's yummy." She wiggled her eyebrows suggestively. Hara rolled her eyes. "Anna, I'm not going to settle and start having babies. This is," Hara stalled. She still didn't want to tell people Gideon was a dragon. She wasn't sure what he was to her, either. Gideon stepped forward and offered his hand. He grinned at Anna. "Are you family to Hara?" Anna looked him up and down without any shame. "You could say that. Her mother was never in the picture and Alfred has never been good with kids. Look at the mess he made with her father. Reckless cad he is." She patted Hara on the cheek and turned to Gideon. "You look after her and make lots of babies." Hara sighed. She wouldn't be able to change Anna's mind now. Hara walked towards the workshop without caring if Gideon followed her or not. Anna would look after him if he went for a wander. Anna went back into the post shop and Gideon followed. He tucked his hands in his pockets so he wasn't tempted to fiddle with the things in her place. He often forgot that certain things weren't his and tucked objects in his pocket as easily as he tucked his hands away. That particular habit had gotten him into a lot of trouble over the years, and not just with humans. Gideon asked, "What was she like as a child?" Anna chuckled. "You got it bad, don't you, boy?" She didn't seem surprised he had followed her or that he was asking questions. Gideon said, "I want her to be part of my collection. I'm not having much luck convincing her about the merits of being in my collection, though. I was hoping you could give me a few tidbits I could use." Anna leaned against the table. She sorted the mail on and studied him for a long moment. Eventually she asked, "Dragon?" He nodded. I'm a little confused that people don't recognize me. I mean, I've lived amongst humans for a very long time and I've never been mistaken as human, and yet there have been a few recently who haven't recognized my nature. Anna said, we don't get to see many dragons out here. Maybe the people you're used to dealing with are people who are always around dragons. Most people still think of dragons as either a distant menace or as nobility. Both are to be feared and catered to. Gideon thought about her words as he wandered the room and looked at the postcards pinned to the wall. They were from places all around the world. He asked, motioning to the postcards, are these to you? Anna said, some, but most of them are for Alfred. Gideon nodded and said, he was very popular in his day. The other nobles didn't understand why he would give it all up for his wife. The other dragons, they understood. Anna smiled warmly at the thought of the woman. She was certainly an awesome woman, but she didn't like the crowds. Gideon remembered the plump woman with fire in her eyes. Agoraphobic. She was still brilliant, though. I always wondered what they would do together, he said distractedly as he looked around. Anna flashed a knowing grin. They've made some things, but I don't think the world is ready for them. The dragon had to agree. Alfred, in his day, had been inventing weapons. Mildred, Alfred's wife, had also been an inventor, but she had been making crystals which could make machines do things by rote. Anything they made would be devastating. He didn't doubt for a minute they had made something spectacular, and he was glad they had never unleashed it on the world. Gideon asked, curious about Hara, does Hara take after them? Anna cleaned her hands on a kerchief as she watched him wander around her shop. Oh, yeah. But she's wary of her talent. Thanks to her dad. He frowned and asked, her dad? Anna nodded. Yeah. Stick around for a moment and I'll tell you all about him. Gideon watched as she put a kettle on and puttered around in the small room at the back of the post shop. Hara heard her ooper first. Crouched over the table, his elbow flapping as he screwed on the cover to a contraption. He picked up a small hammer to hit a stubborn corner into place. This late, she would have expected him to be at dinner already. Hara called, Alfred. Ooper. The banging stopped, so he must have heard her, but when she went further into the workshop, he continued with his latest job. He didn't turn but said to her, took you long enough. Your father came looking for you last year. Hara shrugged. She really didn't want to talk about her father or the 2 years since she left him. I decided to take the long way home. How was he? Alive, he answered, blandly. Hara winced when she asked the question. She had thought she had cut all her ties with her father after the scandal and betrayal. Alfred grunted, so nothing had changed with her father. She wandered over to his work and took a look. Hara asked, a sealed unit? What's it going to do? It'll lift heavy objects with only one man's efforts. That would be useful in this technology-sparse area. She helped him for a while and they were quiet as they worked. Alfred asked, you've been all right? Hara shrugged. It's been all right. Better without Dad. He grunted in response. She added, I kind of need you to help. I have an airship which has some damage. You up to fixing it? His response was another grunt. She knew he would help and he wasn't much for conversation. They finished up and headed towards the ship. The sun had set and there wasn't a chance they would get any of the repairs done tonight. Gideon leaned on the door outside the post shop. Hara looked past him to see if Anna was around, but he was by himself. Alfred nodded his head in greeting and Gideon returned the gesture.